airdropping the KFC. My KFC. My KFC.
Wow. I This guy's great. I think China's definitely trending right now, but is that what prompted you to look into China's sort of coolness and how it's positioning itself?
So this is like a very different view of China, I suppose, to what maybe our readers are used to seeing. But this is definitely a trend, which is showing China as a sort of more of a cool travel destination than a sort of geopolitical rival. There are surveys which show China's brand is definitely on the up, especially among young people. If you combine the sort of cool technologies which China does seem to be coming up with in the last couple of years, you know, everything from electric vehicles to video games to DeepSeek AI and so on, and then you combine it with some of these changing poll numbers, it does suggest that the picture's changing. People are thinking about China in a different way.
So there are definitely numbers that back up how people are becoming more positive about China, but what do you think the Communist Party stands to gain from an improved image?
We talk a lot about hard power. Soft power is the sort of counterpart to this stuff, which, if done right, helps China get its way without having to do all of this coercion, at least in theory.
You know, back in the 90s when I was growing up, I felt like China's image abroad was full of stereotypes. Albeit, you know, this country went through big changes and got rich in a short span of time. But for a long time, the image of China was sort of cattle in the fields and bike on muddy roads. It's very underdeveloped, but it had this sort of slight rustic charm.
China definitely started to think, okay, we need to... We're becoming an economic power. We need to have an image to match, right? And then, of course, the Beijing Olympics, which was a big kind of spectacle for the world to see that China is very different from, you know, this
with lots of people
rice farmers. Yeah, it's not just farmers like pulling with oxen going through like a paddy field anymore. That brings us back to iShowSpeed. He's a YouTube live streamer. He's got 38 million followers. He came to China for 2 weeks earlier this year. And when he came, it was really quite a sensation.
His name came up during a Ministry of Foreign Affairs daily presser. His trip was hailed by the spokesperson as, quote unquote, presenting China in a panoramic view, one without edits or filters.
And I guess, you know, two big themes, I think, come across. I mean, one is the kind of classic China stuff. Rich history and culture, great food, friendly people, so on, so on, so on. And then the other one, maybe a bit more interesting, is technology. So this is the moment that iShowSpeed orders KFC via drone in Shenzhen.
It's airdropping the KFC. My KFC. My KFC. Yes, the drone delivery. Yes, my KFC really came. In the drone. Yo, China's different, yo.
Wow. This guy's great. He's straightforward. He's clearly very excited about getting his KFC delivery. Do you think that he's successful in sort of making tech the appeal for Western audiences?
He is using some technologies which are not, you know, a lot of Western audiences will not be familiar with this kind of stuff. You know, some other ones he found were he danced with a humanoid robot, talked about how great China's high-speed rail is. I think Huawei has some kind of phone which folds in a special way. You know, it's stuff which is genuinely kind of cool.
So Gabriel, back to the question at the top. Is China becoming cool? And what's the Communist Party got to do with it? What's your answer?
I think the Communist Party has a lot of cool stuff to work with now. You know, it's got the technology, it's got the cultural products, it's got all the kind of interesting heritage stuff that it always did. Things like iShowSpeed do suggest that officials are getting more comfortable with jumping on organic trends rather than just kind of manufacturing everything from nothing.
Yeah, iShowSpeed's a good example of sort of them benefiting from maybe doing less or doing things in a less contrived way.
So, I mean, do you think that, China is in fact becoming, I mean, you sound kind of skeptical. Do you think China is in fact becoming cooler in a sort of lasting way?
Well, I think China's always had elements of coolness, right? A lot of it, I would say, it's still untapped or not as accessible. But ultimately, I think this drive on coolness and on affinity towards China is about whether that translates into the business slash political world. Will coolness be enough to influence future consumers? Will it be enough to influence future world leaders and voters so that there are more bills and policies that benefit China's rise, essentially?
Right. I mean, the view from Beijing is, it's great if China's cool, sure. But what they really care about is whether a better image can help them with all these other things, right? Whether the soft power can help with the hard power. And that's still a big question.